Well, turning back to some politics now, Governor John Kasich picking up a new endorsement just before the Nevada caucuses. A former Homeland Security Secretary, in fact, the first of Homeland Security Secretary, and former governor of Pennsylvania, now saying Kasich is the best man for the job. We're talking about Tom Ridge. Secretary Ridge, great to have you back on the program.
And it's nice to be back with you. Thank you.
Why Kasich?
Well, I've got probably a little bit different and a longer-term view of a lot of folks that have been looking at this race. It's good to win the nomination, but I think it's more important to win the presidency. And in order to do that, you not only have to secure support, and you will with predictable Republican states, but there are 7, 8, or 9 purple states. And I think a record of proven conservative leadership, demonstrated leadership, is more important than rhetoric. And I also think that the stakes are much higher than just the presidency. I think the Senate's in balance. I think probably a Supreme Court majority is in balance. So I'm proud to support John because of his record, and I think he has the broadest appeal in those purple states. Winning the nomination is great. Everybody wants to win. Winning the nomination is just a partial step to the bigger prize. And unless we nominate someone who can prevail in those purple states, who's a proven conservative record but has an outreach, and I've known John for 30 years, who can bring in Democrats and independents, we may win the nomination, but we will not win the presidency. John Kasich can do that.
There's been a wave of endorsements I'm sure you've seen from Senator Marco Rubio, who says that his expertise really when it comes to foreign policy and Homeland Security, which is also, of course, your expertise, one of them, Secretary Ridge, is above and beyond the other candidates because he's been sitting on these committees in the Senate. He has an idea of what's at stake, and he also can bring the party together. What's your reaction to that argument from Marco Rubio and, of course, the competition that he poses to Governor Kasich?
Well, I've always appreciated the service that men and women on both sides of the aisle give within the Senate to the United States. But if the advantage you have is a system of briefings, that does not fly, in my mind, to rise to the level of demonstrated decisive leadership, and which governors do. And so at the end of the day, you will pull together, and John Kasich will pull together. And by the way, he was involved in defense issues years ago in Congress. I'm quite confident he has stayed involved. While I appreciate Marco Rubio's service, again, I prefer those who have governed and have a proven record, those who vote and look to establish a record. He's a very able young man, and I frankly think he'd be a great vice president.
Well, interesting. We'll see about the pairings and where everything figures itself out. Of course, there's a lot of folks now that are saying Donald Trump has the pathway to the nomination. And if you look at a new Quinnipiac poll out, it looks like Donald Trump is ahead when it comes to the home state of John Kasich in Ohio. Of course, that's early, and we'll wait. But what is your reaction to to Donald Trump and being in the lead? And the questions that are being raised about John Kasich's real path to the nomination, considering the momentum of Donald Trump?
Well, I mean, my views on Donald Trump were well known. As a matter of fact, after I expressed them on Neil Cavuto, he tweeted, I was just a failed governor of Pennsylvania. So what do I know? So I guess Donald knows where I'm coming from. And again, I'm not looking just at the nomination. He may have a clear path, but we're in this for the long term, and I think John's going to do well in Ohio. First of all, nobody else in that slate of 5 has cut taxes, eliminated the deficit, built a surplus, and been responsible for job creation in Ohio than John Kasich. So I think he wins Ohio. We're in for the long term, but I do think it's important for Republican voters, as passionate as they are about candidates, the nomination is an important step. But who in this field can bring the party together? I certainly think John can. And who's going to have the proven record of leaders? It's not about rhetoric. It's not about promises. It's about, I think record trumps rhetoric. And I think John in the long run will do that. And I think we need to find a candidate, and it's John, who prevails in the purple states, not just in the red ones.
Well, we'll note the word choice of Trump's other candidates. Okay, let me ask you just quickly the other news as well, Secretary Ridge, just because the president, of course, made news this morning about closing Gitmo. And obviously, considering your experience, I'm wondering your initial reaction, fresh as it is, here we are just an hour after that announcement, to the president's proposal and his intentions.
I've never felt there was a need to close Gitmo. My experience in relationships with foreign leaders around the world, the global anxiety they had about Guantanamo wasn't that we would take those that would do us harm off the battlefield and put them in a place out of our way, out of the world's way. It was the notion that the United States would just take somebody and put them in prison permanently without some form of adjudication. We have a system of adjudication. We've figured out how to separate the wheat from the chaff. We know who these people are, and frankly, I think closing Guantanamo is a bad deal. It was never about the location. It was about some form of due process to be consistent with American principles, consistent with our Constitution. We have it now. I think we ought to keep Guantanamo open.
The questions about values and principles also comes up when it comes to this issue of Apple versus the FBI. And we're getting a new development today. You have Bill Gates coming out. He's going against, it sounds like, although he's trying to back off it a little bit, going against the tech industry. You've had some really strong thoughts. In fact, you published an editorial on FoxNews.com talking about personal privacy and personal liberty and why that's important to you. But as you're watching this conversation continue to play out on the public space, Secretary, where do you stand on this and why?
Well, I would like both everyone who's interested in this debate, and frankly, all Americans should be interested in the debate, to understand a couple of things. The Farouk phone is just one incident and is a known terrorist post a horrible terrorist event. But the fact of the matter is, unless the genius and the leaders of our technology company figure out a way to work with law enforcement and government, the same kind of liberties and freedoms that Mr. Cook embraces, and he's right to talk about privacy, will still be subjected to corrosion and erosion if we allow organized crime, terrorists, pedophiles, drug syndicates to communicate in an encrypted way, and we don't, with a warrant, get access to that. So this is a classic example of where the public sector and the private sector collectively have an American interest in finding common ground. And the recent remarks by Mr. Cook suggest, in a very conciliatory approach, that maybe we're getting closer and closer to that. It's not just this phone call. We live in the digital forevermore. And there are going to be many more incidents like this, not just involving terrorists, but criminal activity, and we have to figure our way through it. And I'm convinced we have a technical way. We need to have the will and a means to protect the privacy that everybody is so concerned about, including yours truly.
Well, let's hope that a compromise is found, and that in the process of working towards that compromise, we set a new standard, because that's where we could be upon the precipice of, and that could be a great thing. So we'll remain optimistic until getting information as to otherwise. Secretary Ridge, great to have you on the program. We look forward to having you back. Thank you.
And thanks for the invitation. Good to join you. Thank you.
Thank you.